I ask this in the most non-creepy way possible. To those Redditors that have killed a person, what was it like and how did it change your life? Please like and subscribe to support this channel. I was out drinking with a roommate in 2001. She got too drunk and walked out of the bar around midnight. We were with a big group of people and no one saw her leave. We looked for her for a couple of hours. She was found dead in a river about a mile away in the morning by a kayaker. I feel really responsible for that one. I meant to write, felt, big-ass Freudian slip there. We all knew she was a blackout drinker, and we were all still mourning the suicide of our mutual friend, who was her boyfriend at the time that he hung himself in her basement, just a couple of months before. That was a heavy summer. But I'll tell you, I've come to value the negative experiences in my life. If my life was all roses and sunshine, I would never be able to help or relate to anybody else. When a patient or a friend says, "You don't understand," I can say, "Hell yes I do, and maybe do some good." I was in Iraq. I was a door gunner on a Black Hawk for a while, but never killed. Mostly, it was hosing down DZs and whatnot, but this one time, it was different. We were dropping a ranger team into a hot LZ in the Baghdad outskirts to clean up some snipers who were picking off contractors and the like. I was on the minigun on my door, and as we landed I saw a Land Rover with the back cut off into a pickup, transport design, pull over with a bunch of insurgents holding RPGs. One of them noticed us offloading and I watched him aim and fire as I brought my M134 to him. The rocket malfunctioned and spun off to the right, but I was already holding down the triggers. You know when you read about shooters seeing a red mist after a kill? This was like a red fog. I must have put over 1,000 rounds into that truck before the tanks went up. About a year after that, I was asked to cut down a tree for my grandma's neighbor. As soon as I got the chainsaw revved up, I went into shock and had to go to the hospital. Shit's fucked up, yo. Can't say I have, but an acquaintance of mine did 4 years in jail for manslaughter. He was hanging out outside at some party when he saw a girl running screaming towards him. She was being chased by some drunk dude. He told said dude to chill out. Said dude picked a fight. Acquaintance dude picked up a metal pipe on the floor to defend himself. He's somewhat vertically challenged, hit said dude in the head. Said dude died 3 days later in the hospital. He never felt regret since he gave said drunk dude a chance, but said dude did not oblige. Also, said dude was supposedly a scumbag. I had the honor of volunteering to go to Afghanistan as a combat engineer. Basically we drove down roads before the sun came up and usually got back by afternoon, looking for IEDs. Well, this was a day after we had our first casualty, so our platoon, 3rd, was to escort 1st, whom just got hit last night, back to our FOB. For a background of where we were, it was in FOB Ghazni, in Ghazni province. It's on the eastern side, south of Kabul and way north of Kandahar. Anyways, I was gunning for the lead truck. We got a text on our Blue Force trackers. Basically it's a GPS network that can track real-time to everyone who is on the network, that a unit got hit and needed our recovery assets to take this vehicle back to the same COB as first was. Well, we get to where they are and their truck was hit, small IED, just the front left tire was blown off, no injuries. Our LT tells our wrecker crew to drive up and hook up the damaged truck. I'm eating some trail mix and watching this village to our right. I noticed some puffs of smoke in the field just short of our position. I first thought, who popped smoke? Then I heard our boomerang system go off. It's an audio microphone system that hears supersonic rounds and gives you the rough distance and direction. Well, I start firing, 240 B7. 62 millimeters of funness. They were far off. All I saw were muscle flashes and a tiny dot. Shot at this dried out creek in the tree line. The puffs of smoke in the fields were mortars, smaller ones mostly and a few large ones. Well, while I'm looking for more muscle flashes I notices the point of origin for a mortar team. Seriously, it was past the village and up at the base of this mountain. The village was about 700 to 900 meters and the team had to be a good 1,200 meters away. I know what you're thinking. How could I see and judge that far? Well, I was issued a scope for my 249 that I would put on the 240 when I was gunning. It also had meter markers on the scope. To get that team I had to tilt the 240 up till around 1,400 meters on the scope just to get them. I did an ammo change. Each box had about 200 rounds, while they were still shooting us. Altogether I fired about 500 rounds. I knew that I had to have killed some of them for two reasons. When I fired into the dried riverbed, the firing stopped. Also, because of my position, the rest of the gun trucks couldn't get a clear shot to there. The tree line, I can't say the same because everyone was shooting there. The second is that we had another unit with us. They had the more maneuverable MRAPs. After the Apaches arrived, 20 minutes later, they pushed into the village. They found the van and the motor crew shot the fuck up. Also in the dried riverbed and the tree line. While it was not up close, I did feel good to return the favor. A couple of funny shit happened while this was going on. I have a few seconds of video our driver took BTW. When I needed more ammo, the guy in our truck couldn't get the ammo box to open and was cussing in his Polish accent. Got that on the video ROFL. And the gunner who was on the MK-19, auto grenade launcher, was new to the weapon and didn't realize that you have to lob the rounds. So some of those puffs of smoke in the field in front of us were his rounds. Lol. Also, I heard a ping real close as I was shooting, then the boomerang went off and told me, 3 o'clock, 300 meters, and I think, no shit. Fucking felt the round hit my shield. Our unit got back in September 2010 with 2 casualties. Both fathers, one a grandfather. Their truck flipped upside down when it was hit with an IED. The gunner died instantly, and the TC passed in the Naval Hospital in Maryland. His family visited him one last time before he left. During my deployment, I've had closer mortar rounds hit while in our MRAPs, not so scary. And rocket and mortar attack on this small compound, about a 100 meters by 100 meters. That shit, I believe, is the reason why I find FPS like Call of Duty boring. It's not that I can't play them, maybe it is, it's just that once you've been in real attacks and firefights, the video game just can't compete. I'm not glorifying war, or even saying what I experienced was that intense. But it is real, people that I trained with died. There is no respawn or third-person view. There is only chaos in your reaction. SPC, 810th Eng Company, Georgia Army National Guard. When I was in Iraq for my second time in 2005, the platoon I was attached to as a medic were on a route clearance mission at about 0300 in Tikrit. The purpose of these missions was to try to locate any IEDs or mines that were to be planted along the roadsides to give the logistics convoys moving through some trouble. Curfew on our area for the locals ended around 0600, and we generally had to be extra vigilant if we saw any people or vehicles breaking curfew when we were out doing these sorts of things. At this time I was still riding in what we called the base boat. It was just a pickup truck-style Hummer with a 240B machine gun mounted in the back. We were on a back street when we saw headlights coming towards us down the road. We started shouting and signaling for the vehicle to stop where it was at, but it just kept approaching my vehicle. It kept coming closer and closer, and the SSG that was in charge of my vehicle was standing in the front, shouting, and was blocking my gunner's shot on the vehicle. I stood with my M16 pointed at the vehicle hoping that it would stop, but it didn't, and I had to make the decision to fire on the vehicle when it became clear it wouldn't stop. After firing about 4 to 5 rounds at the vehicle, it stopped. When it didn't blow up and a young boy hopped out of the passenger side screaming, I knew it had to be some sort of confusion on their part. I grabbed my aid bag and ran towards the vehicle, finding the older man in the driver's seat, shot through the chest and upper left arm. I pulled him out and attempted to save him, but he had already passed. I can still see his face, and the face of the young man screaming and crying, and I'll never forget these images. War is not glorious. Throwaway account. Military, 1969. There are 2 ways: anonymous, long shots, etc., and close contact. Close includes guns if you can see each other. It impacts people differently, but in the military at least it is sanctioned killing, which I no longer believe in. I've done both. Anonymous bothered me more because it wasn't necessary to save myself. I can't think of any descriptions that aren't cliched, but the note I wanted to make wasn't on the killings themselves. It's one other's perspectives. People view someone who has committed a killing differently, even if it is a legitimate, legal killing. Thankfully, I learned this in time to not share these events with my family. The perspective of others may not be disapproval, but it's STLL there. You're different. They can't believe you're capable. Or, conversely, what if you snap? And maybe there's some reason there. Once you've killed, you actually are different, having broken one of society's greatest taboos. Even if it doesn't haunt you, it changes you, and that change shows through somehow. As for me, years of nightmares, and inability to handle guns now, regret for having served. At peace now after much counseling. Nightmares gone. But I'm glad I never told anyone but my counselor. To this day, I don't know if I did the right thing. The only people who have actually known about this was my psychiatrist for the time after it all happened, and the best friend I was with at the time. I was about 13, maybe 14 at the time. My friend and I loved urban exploration, we were entranced in it. Everything we did was based around finding or discovering a lost area. It was fun, I'm not going to lie about that. I loved it so much. His parents had gone for the weekend, my mom and dad were out of state too for a business meeting, I think, they might have just gone on vacation. He had discovered this small building that resembled an asylum. I don't know if it actually was, but the medical beds and locked-down rooms strongly reminded me of one. We were in an area of Long Island that had lots of gang violence, mostly due to meth. It wasn't very local though, we had never seen a gang fight break out nor seen any references to them. For safety, we always brought some type of weapon, usually a knife. This time, since this was really deep into the forested areas of NYLI, we were iffy about our safety. He brought his dad's pistol, I think it was some sort of 9mm, I'm not sure though. I was really nervous about it being there. I told him I didn't like the idea of it and if we were caught by police with it we'd be in a lot of trouble. We were walking around for a while, it was pretty dark out. We found this one room, that was really like out of an old horror film. It was an old medical ward, filled with medical beds and other small equipment. It all seemed so surreal, the fact that time had left this place so perfectly intact. Then we both realized we weren't the only ones in there, we heard someone breathing. I spun the light around and scanned for a couple of seconds until I saw him, a squatter or a person of some lonely kind laying down there. He was bleeding a lot. Both of us were kind of in shock. My friend was freaking out the second he heard the breath, and I was shaking like it was freezing out. We cautiously approached him and he only responded with a slight twitch of his head. I slowly walked up to him and asked him if he was okay to move. He responded again with a shake of the head, saying no. It hit my friend then that it was gang violence, it must have been. I really doubt that a murderer would hunt out someone in an abandoned place and kill him just for joy. There was a feeling of meaning there. He wasn't dead though, and that's what had us stuck. What do we do? Two 13-year-olds, with a gun, and a dying man. We were fucked, no matter what way you look at it. The guy moaned again and started to try to move his hand in the direction of the gun. I realized how messed up he really was. His face was practically smashed in. Arms had gashes going up them, he was done. I backed up and was worried that he wanted to hurt us, but then realized what he was asking. He wanted my friend to kill him, to put him out. My friend, thus forth regarded as C, was almost out of it. C wasn't someone that could handle blood or anything else in the slightest. We were both just kids, we shouldn't have seen something like this. He couldn't do it, he couldn't bring himself to do it. I swear we were in there 2 hours in total. The first 45 minutes was him walking back and forth trying to do it, but he couldn't. He told me to leave the room, but then walked out crying. He just couldn't bring himself to do it. I had the gun now. I looked at the man and wondered what he felt like, wondered where he was from or how he grew up. I thought about if he had any family, or any type of relationship. I was so scared, I was shaking so much. I walked up to him and told him that it was all going to be better, I promised him that. I was crying, I realized I was crying at that moment. He responded by slowly nudging my hand with his head. I knew he knew what was happening. At this point, I realized that C was gone. He had left, out of fear. I don't blame him, even though I couldn't trust him for a long time after that. I didn't have any second opinion. I took off my sweatshirt and laid it over his head. I said a prayer and cried softly while doing it. I held his hand and told him that I was going to do it, and that it would be fast. I gave him a prayer, a soft prayer. I put the gun over the sweatshirt, and kneeled for a good 15 minutes, crying my eyes out. I don't remember pulling the trigger, I can't remember it. I just remember the blood, the slump of his body, and my sweatshirt. I stood up and walked to the other side of the room, and sat there just crying and thinking. I walked myself home that night. I put the gun in my backpack, and walked out. I left the flashlight there, I couldn't bring myself to walking over to his body. It was a horrible feeling, I didn't sleep for days, weeks. I was diagnosed with extreme insomnia, I was hospitalized. My parents didn't ever find out about it, they thought that my insomnia was something from just being me. My psychiatrist told me I did the right thing, that I did what I had to do in the situation. He didn't stand a chance in the hospital, she said, and that he would have just been put in more pain. I don't know if what I did was right. I know it fucked me up severely for life. TLDR? I mercy killed someone at the age of 13 to 14, felt terrible, gained extreme insomnia, and still have hallucinations about it to this day. This is hard for me to share still, so please be sensitive with your comments and/or questions. I had an abortion middle of last year and it was to this day the hardest decision I've had to make. I went into the situation fully knowledgeable of all my options and decided this was the best one for me. Basically what it came down to was that I didn't want to have a kid in the situation I was in. Rehab for drugs and alcohol, barely sure I wanted to be sober at the time, and no ability to even care for myself, let alone a child. All that pretty much made up my mind that it was definitely not the right time to be popping out a kid, and if I had, I still believe it would have been selfish of me. Anyways, after about 4 hours of waiting, and, from time to time, going to the bathroom to puke up stomach juices, they let me in and thankfully put me under for the procedure. I woke up with socks on my feet and remember that was the only form of comfort I had at the time. It took me a few minutes to fully come to, and when I did I realized I no longer had a child inside of me, felt immense emptiness, and just started crying. There were 2 other girls in the hospital beds around me in the recovery room and they seemed perfectly fine. They were just looking at me like they wish they could help me feel better. So as quickly as any drugged up crying person could I got out of there and just wanted some goddamn food. I got picked up by my brother and my, now ex-boyfriend. I was just completely numb. Food helped but I still felt completely empty and was staring out the window during the drive back. My friend picked me up from my area and I just slept at her apartment for about 3 hours. 17 at the time and it was a secret from my parents. 2 days later I popped some pills to try to numb the pain I was going through, but it didn't work so I went to sleep. I woke up the next morning ready to face everyone in my rehab and get honest about lying about being sober so far in my recovery. I just wanted help and to be happy, and I was accepted with loving arms. Today I still feel sad about it, but I try not to beat myself up about it. I've talked to people who have gone through the same thing and I am in a better place with it all. My abortion, and the despair I felt afterwards, was the determining factor of me getting sober. I use this event in my life to fuel me towards a better life for myself, to remind me of the despair I had when I was getting loaded, and to help others who have gone through the same thing.